Do you just want to start from the beginning?
Um, yeah, for my 30th birthday, my husband and I decided to take a trip to Cancun. Just him and I. We have three kids and we haven't been on a trip by ourselves since our honeymoon 5 years ago. So we decided to take this trip. I packed our bags, got everything packed. And then we went to this resort. We stayed at an adult only, all inclusive resort in Cancun. It was so much fun. We had a great time. Well, I had put my purse in the checked luggage. Wasn't thinking, I just packed it real fast when I was trying to get everything together. I put my purse in the checked luggage. I didn't wind up taking it out at all while we were at the resort. The resort, like I said, was all inclusive, so I didn't really need it.
Mhm.
It just stayed in the luggage. Well, we went to leave Cancun. We checked our bags, same as we did coming in, and then we were there early. So my husband and I went. We did some shopping. We had breakfast, and then we go to our gate about, I don't know, probably 30, 40 minutes before it was supposed to board. Well, as we're walking up, this lady is calling our name over the intercom, and she calls us up to the desk where she tells us that we can't board, that there's a problem, a security issue, and that we need to step aside and she can't let us on the flight until it's resolved. So we asked her, what the problem was. She said she didn't know, but and she wasn't sure if we'd missed the flight or not, but if we did, they'd help us rebook it. Well, so at this point, we're kind of concerned. We're not sure what's going on. I work for the airline, not United. I work for Alaska, but we're trying to figure out what's going on. I'm thinking that maybe it's a prank or something. My coworkers are playing on me, like not sure quite what's going on. Well, then we're standing there for probably 20, 30 minutes. We're watching everybody board this plane. And then United Airlines manager supervisor comes up and talks to us, and then or she comes up to us, and then like five National Guard people in uniform come over, and this lady tells us that she found a gun in our suitcase, and we're trying to figure out how it would have gotten there. We have no idea what's going on. Well, she says she'll explain more, and they like shoo us out the back way of the airport, like through this, I don't know, it's like back door area, and it led out into the parking lot where there was a bunch more National Guard people there. Well, they have our suitcase and they open it and they're telling us where they found the gun. And I realized that it was in my concealed carry compartment of my purse that was checked. Like I
Mm.
said, I never took it out. I didn't even realize it was in there. I never even took my purse out of the suitcase. So I had no idea. I had no idea how it wasn't even caught leaving Boise. We shouldn't have been able to leave Boise with it. But so they tell us about this, and we're like, and I apologize. I'm like, we had no idea it was in there. I'm sorry. What do I need to do? Well, then the lady tells us that as long as we have the paperwork for it showing that it's legal and that's registered to me, that's fine. So my husband calls his mother, who was staying at our house here in Meridian, and he tells her that she needs to find this paperwork. Well, she gets this paperwork and she takes a picture of it and she sends it to us. And then the lady with United printed it out, and they're like, well, we need to take you out to the police station to get this sorted out. They then tell me that because the bag's registered under my name, I take responsibility for it. It's my luggage. I was like, okay, this was my screw up. Like, absolutely, it's fine. I'll do whatever you guys need me to do. Well, my husband's trying to ask them what's going on because they're telling him he can't come with me. And he's trying to ask them if they're arresting me, what's going on. None of them spoke English. The lady with United just kept saying, it'll be fine, just show them the paperwork. So they shoo me off into this police car with
By
four, there were
yourself.
four by myself with four National Guard people. They had two in the front seat and then me in the middle of this police car in between two other National Guard officers. And my husband grabs a cab and follows us because they wouldn't tell him where they were taking me even. They just told him that they were taking me to the police station and they didn't know which one. And none of the people that were driving spoke English. So he had no idea where they were taking me, no idea where we were going. Well, we stopped by this police station, I think, where they filled out just this paperwork about like my height, my name, things like that, description of what I look like, I guess. And then they handed them this paper and they put me back in this car, and then they take me to this other building. The whole time, like I said, nobody in the car speaks English. I don't know where they're taking me. Well, they take me in this building, they take me upstairs, and they sit me on this bench, and somebody comes out and tells me that I need to speak to the attorney general, and that all I need to do is just show him this paperwork and it'll be fine, you know, everything will be fine. Well, I'm sitting out here for at least 3 hours, and they're in there with all this stuff. Like, they have my suitcase, they have my passport. They wouldn't let my husband come there. He was downstairs the whole time. They wouldn't let him come up to see me. And they're doing I don't know what they're doing in there. Well, then this lady comes out and she says she's a public defender. Now, mind you, they never took the paperwork that I had for the gun, anything. I'm still holding this paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
This lady comes out and she speaks some English. It's broken English, but she speaks some English. And she tells me that she's a public defender and that I am going to be going to prison in Mexico for 3 to 6 months, up to 6 years, because the gun is illegal in Mexico. And I handed her the paperwork and was trying to explain to her that I had the paperwork for it. It wasn't illegal. Well, then she tells me that paperwork is for Idaho, for the US, that it may not be illegal in Idaho, but there it is illegal. And that luckily the caliber of gun that I had is legal in Mexico, but if you have a specific permit, if it's a 9mm or above, then apparently it would have been a bigger issue because only the military out there is allowed to carry guns.
So was it a handgun? Was it a handgun?
It was the 380 handgun.
Okay.
She tells me this, and then finally they let my husband come up. And my husband comes up, and there's this other guy with him. And this guy says that he's an attorney as well. And he sits there explaining to us that we can hire him. If we pay him $10,000, he'll get me out in 48 hours. And we're just sitting, I have 3 kids. Like, we're sitting here going, what the heck do we do? Like, we don't have that kind of money just lying around. I mean,
who does?
Most people don't.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're kind of panicking, but my husband's like, we'll figure it out. Like, we can't risk you going to prison for 6 years in Mexico. Like, he's like, I don't know what to do. We'll figure it out. So they make him leave, and they tell me that I'm going to have to be in this holding cell in this building. And it was like in the basement of this building, and they take me down here to this cell that is this tiny concrete room. It had like a concrete bunk bed with a like thin foam mattress on it. This thin foam mattress was covered in hair, blood, just all kinds of stains. I have no idea what all was on it. It had a toilet that I couldn't flush. Like, there was no handle, no way to flush it. There was no toilet paper. There was like, it looked like it was a sink, but there was no faucet. Like, it was just the basin, I guess, in this concrete slab with no running water or anything. There's bugs literally crawling all over this mattress, all over the walls, everything. It was horrible. And then at the end of it, there's like this hole in the ceiling. Well, they let my husband give me a blanket. They wouldn't provide any pillows or blankets. They let him give me one blanket, which I laid across the mattress, so I wasn't laying directly on it.
And was he there staying with you, but outside the cell, or?
No, they made him leave. He had to leave.
He couldn't stay with you.
No, so he stayed at a hotel that was close by. It was like 15 minutes, I think, from the holding area or wherever it was that they had me. And they put me in there, and so they told my husband that he could bring me food and water, but that cab ride that he took from the airport just to where I was at, which was probably maybe 20 minutes, it costed $200 just for that cab ride for that amount of time. So the lawyer, I'm not even convinced that this guy's a real lawyer at this point. I don't know. He tells him that he can take him to see me and to bring me food. Well, all of this stuff gets done. That night, one of the lawyers came in and brought me some like Chinese food or something and a bottle of water. Well, I sat it down on the bed for a second to talk with him about what was going to happen. And when I turned around to eat it, there was bugs all in it. So I didn't wind up eating it, obviously. I had that bottle of water. Well, that night I freaked out and I like had this, I don't know, I felt like I couldn't breathe and I started panicking. Yeah. And so I called for one of the guards and they came in, and again, none of them spoke English. So he just kept yelling at me in Spanish and I have no idea what he was saying. Well, finally, another guy came in and said that he was a doctor and told me that I needed to calm down and that everything was fine, and that, this was the process, and that if I didn't calm down, that they were going to have to take me to the hospital, and that it would be worse if they had to take me to the hospital. Because he said that they wouldn't, I don't know. Again, he didn't speak super great English, but he said something about the hospital it would be worse and that I'd have to stay in the jail longer. And so I'm trying to calm down. Well, he offers me this medication that he said was an anxiety pill. Hindsight, I probably shouldn't have taken it. I don't know, but I took what he gave me. It was some round white pill that I assumed was like a Xanax or something. All I know is I went back into my cell and I fell asleep. And I woke up. I have no idea. There was no clocks or anything. I don't know what time it was. I woke up probably a few hours later to these two men that came into my cell. They asked me, one of them did speak English, the other didn't. And I'd never seen these guys before, so I don't know. They were in some kind of all black, like uniform looking. I'm not sure what.
So they were guards, like law enforcement, or?
I don't know. They were in some kind of black uniform, but they wouldn't tell me who they were. Like they wouldn't really answer any of my questions. They came in and they started yelling at me to get up and had me undress. And they had this cell phone that they were taking pictures of me with. Well, I tried to cover myself, and then they started yelling at me and they handcuffed my hands behind my back. I was trying to call for help. I don't know. I was crying and screaming, and the one guy ripped off a chunk of this mattress and shoved it in my mouth.
And were you still kind of drowsy from that pill? Like, is it kind of a fog?
I was super like dizzy and nauseous feeling and tired, and I don't know. I don't know. It was just, all was kind of blurry. And then these men, there was two, and they took turns sexually assaulting me. And then when they went to leave, the one guy, both of them had guns on their hips. One of them the one that spoke English, he pulled the gun out and he put it to my head, and he said if I said anything to my husband, that they would kill me and say I tried to escape. So they left, and I went back to, I was just so tired from whatever that medicine was. I just went back to sleep. And I woke up the next morning to these cleaning ladies coming in, and they were cleaning the other cells. And I tried to ask what time it was. And one of the ladies, she like pointed to me and she like shook her finger and said, can't talk to you or something, and kept doing what she was doing. And they just ignored me. Well, then eventually, and again, I was just sick and groggy feeling most of that day. So I was on again, off again, sleeping. My husband finally showed up. They brought him by there around 2:00 that day. It was 2 or 2:30. And he came in and he brought me some food. I was out of water at that point, and they wouldn't give me anything. So he brought me some food that, again, I didn't wind up eating because bugs got in it. I think I got like 2 bites of it before the bugs started getting in it. And he told me he had contacted the US consulate and that somebody would be in to see me, that they said they were going to send somebody to check on me. And he also told me that he had gotten the money together. He had sent the money. He had to send 4 different $2,500 increments to 4 different
this
people.
Attorney.
Yeah, for this attorney. It was 4 different people via the Western Union that he had to send $2,500 to, which again seemed sketchy, but I mean, what else were we supposed to do?
Yeah.
So he told me that, and then he told me that they said that they might be able to get me out that evening. So I was like, okay, you know, cool. I waited there, and then nobody ever came by. No, he never came back by. Nobody ever showed up. Nothing ever happened. Well, that doctor came by again that evening, and I asked him what time it was, and he said it was like 9:00. So at that point, I knew that they weren't getting me out that day. And he asked me if I wanted another one of those pills. And I took it. I said yes, and I took it because I just wanted to sleep. I mean, that was the only way I could sleep. Every time I'd lay down, these bugs would start crawling all over me. And so I took the medication again. And nobody ever came in the second day. Nothing happened that night. Well, then the next morning around 9 a.m., they come down. It was probably 9:30. They come down and they tell me that I can go. And they bring me up to this room with my husband where he's signing they're having him sign some kind of paperwork, which none of it was in English. So I took photos of all of it because they refused to give me copies of this paperwork that I signed. Mm-hmm. So I took pictures with my cell phone of all the paperwork. Well, and that was the other thing, the mug shot that they took, it was taken with a cell phone. I was never given any like paperwork or anything on what I was being charged with, nothing. They just kept promising me I was going to see a judge, which never happened. And then they released me at the 48-hour mark.
Did they let you have your phone when you were there in the jail, or?
No. So I had my phone up until they took me downstairs to that basement.
Then your husband took your phone?
And my husband took my phone.
Okay.
I gave him my cell phone and all of my belongings. The only thing they let me keep was my clothing that I was wearing. And they took the shoelaces out of my tennis shoes, but let me have those. But that was all they'd let me have in there.
So your husband's signing paperwork and they say you can go after 48 hours.
Yeah. But there's no, like, they didn't send us, like, they didn't give us anything. And I translated this paperwork. Nowhere on this paperwork does it say what I was being charged with. It just has my husband's statement of what happened. I downloaded an app to translate all this because I don't speak Spanish.
Did they keep the gun?
Yeah.
They kept the gun.
They kept the gun, my passport, and our suitcase.
They
and
kept
my purse.
They kept your passport.
Mm-hmm. They kept everything everything. They gave my husband his passport back. They kept mine.
So they just said you can go, but they kept all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So they told me that there would be a hearing that I would have to attend virtually. And after the hearing that they would send all of my stuff, all of my belongings back to include my passport. But they said that they would get me paperwork to be able to get back home to the US without the passport. So we leave and this lawyer drives us to the hotel where my husband was staying out, and we were told just to wait there until they were able to get us this paperwork. So the lawyer that evening finally messages us and is like, hey, meet me out in the parking lot. I've got the paperwork for you. He gives us this paperwork, and again, it's all in Spanish. So I have no idea what it says. I pull everything up online and I translate it. And this paperwork is a police report that says that I lost my passport at the mall. Like, it says nothing about anything that just happened. It says that I lost my passport at the mall. So, and my birth date was wrong on this paperwork. So we message him and we're like, how am I going to get home with this? Like, this isn't this, and working for the airline, I'm like, I need an emergency passport or at least documentation that has my correct birth date on it. Like, they're not going to let me on the flight with this. He's like, no, it's taken care of. They'll let you on the flight. You'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. So I call United Airlines to see if they will help us rebook our flight, because at this point, obviously we've missed our flight. And I assume that they know what's going on because they're the ones that told us we couldn't board, right? Mm-hmm. I call them and they have no idea. They have no record of this. There's no record that there was a gun in my luggage. There's no record that they refused to let me board. Nothing. It's just showing that we missed our flight. That's all that they have record of. So they rebooked us. They didn't charge us anything additional because they briefly explained to them what happened. And I don't know if this lady thought I was crazy or what, but she rebooked it. Didn't ask questions. Yeah. She rebooked it. She didn't ask questions and rebooked our flight for that next day, which was Friday. And so we get to the airport and we show them this paperwork and the desk, and they call whoever they need to call and confirm that this paperwork's accurate. And they walk us, like personally escort us through TSA and through security to our gate. No, nothing else. They just let us through. And we board our flight. We land in San Francisco, and San Francisco is where customs is at. So we're going through customs. And again, I'm freaking out because even though we're in the US, I don't have a passport and this paperwork isn't legit and my birth date doesn't match. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how the heck, like, are they going to send me back to Mexico? What the heck are they going to do? So we get up there and they make us go to this special desk where this guy in San Francisco looks over this paperwork and he makes some calls, has us sit down, and then calls us back up and tells us that he went ahead. And of course, I'm not going to tell them what actually happened because I don't want them, I want to get home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he tells us that he's like, just so you know, your birth date's wrong on this. So I'm surprised they let you through. He's like, but I went ahead and called and had your passport marked as lost or stolen so nobody can use it. I was like, okay, great. Thank you. Yeah. Well, he gives us this paperwork. He lets us go through. We go through customs. We go through everything. We board our flight and we get home. Well, the next day, I go to the hospital to have workup done and get put on antibiotics and all of that. And I explain to them what happens, and they call the Meridian PD, who then tells us that it's out of their jurisdiction and they can't do anything. And they can't even do anything as far as the gun's concerned to report it lost or stolen because it's out of their jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So it's still registered under my name, but I don't have it. It's somewhere in Mexico, they've got it. Well, then all of that gets done. They put me on medication. They refer me to this like facility downtown Boise that does counseling and stuff. And there's a lawyer out there that they say that I should talk to her. Same thing. She says it's out of her jurisdiction. They can't do anything, but I need to talk to the Cancun PD. I'm not going to do that because they're not going to do anything. Well, then our friend that sent the Western Unions over, she reached out to us and she was like, hey, one of those $2,500 transactions that was sent to Karen, whatever her name was, she never picked it up. And my husband was like, well, see if we can reverse it. Then like, I'm back home. So she calls and she gets the Western Union reversed and gets at least the $2,500 back.
Yeah.
So this lawyer messages the lawyer that was doing all this, messages my husband and tells him that there's a problem with Western Union and they can't access the money. Well, my husband plays dumb and tells them he doesn't know, like, hey, here's the receipt. The Western Union was sent. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to yesterday, they sent me this paperwork saying that my hearing is on Tuesday, today. Today's at 7 p.m., which is odd in itself, 7 p.m. Cancun time. So it's 6 p.m. our time, which was weird in itself, the timing. But he reaches out to this lawyer because there's no link for me to join. There's nothing, like there's no Zoom link, there's no invite, there's nothing. He reaches out to this lawyer, and this lawyer tells him that he's not giving him any information on how to join this unless we pay the other $2,500. And so we have no information on how to join this link. Well, then he tells my husband that they're thinking about dropping the charges completely, and there's no hearing and no judge, and they're just going to drop it all. But he can't give him any information, won't send him receipts, because my husband asked for paperwork of my charges, receipts of where like the funds are being used. You know, generally attorneys will send you receipts of their hours and stuff. And he tells him he can't send him any of this unless we pay that other $2,500. So I don't know what exactly is going on. Like I said, I have paperwork saying that there's some kind of hearing or something today, but I have no way to join it. This lawyer won't give us any information. I don't know that any of it's legit because they've been promising me I was going to see a judge that I saw. I never saw paperwork. Like it was all just so weird.
So did you guys actually go, when you left the airport, did you actually go to the police station?
I think the first place that they took me was the police station. It was a very weird like room.
But there were people dressed as police, like in uniform.
Yeah, so there was a guy in uniform that was in there that was in what appeared to be a police uniform that took my name, my passport information, was asking about like how many tattoos I have, that kind of thing, and just wrote it all on this paper. We were there for maybe 10 minutes before they took me to this other building.
This other building that was pretty nondescript, and then they took you into the basement of this building.
Yeah.
And you don't know if that was necessarily like a Cancun Police Department building or.
So my husband has the name of it. It's like Republico. I don't know. They told me it was where the Attorney General or something was at, and that was who I had to talk to. I don't know. Like most of the building was pretty nice. It looks like what could be a government building. It was a small building, but I mean, I don't know. I've never been arrested. I've never been to jail. I have no criminal record. Like, yeah, I don't really know how all of this works, but.
So is it illegal to fly with a gun in your checked bag from the States?
No. So.
You just have to declare it?
So yes and no. So it is illegal to take it into Mexico, but there's certain protocol that they are supposed to do if you have a checked gun. It's supposed to be in a locked box. It's supposed to be declared with paperwork. And then if you have checked luggage, it goes through a separate conveyor. All of the luggage is supposed to be scanned, but the ones with firearms in it goes through a separate conveyor.
Okay.
If they run luggage through the regular conveyor that has a firearm in it, they're supposed to scan every single piece of luggage. So I have no idea how that got past TSA in Boise, but they should have pulled us from the flight in Boise, or at very minimum pulled us in Denver where we had our layover going to Cancun.
Okay, so you went Boise, Denver, Cancun, and somehow it got in the country through all that, and then going Cancun to San Fran to Boise on the return.
Yeah.
And I guess as far as your ID at the airport and everything, did you have that separate from your purse and you just kept the purse in there, like you said, the whole time?
Yeah. So I brought my purse just because I bring it everywhere. I don't know why I brought it, but for my carry-on, I was just bringing a backpack. So I just took my wallet and my passport so that I could have like my iPad and all of that stuff. There was just more room than there was in my purse. So I just checked the purse and brought the backpack on board with me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't think anything of it.
I can't imagine what your husband was going through during all of this. We were just in Cancun at Christmas. So I'm thinking like similar scenario. This didn't happen, but what if I was going through this? So what was he thinking? I mean, you're in a jail. Who knows what they're going to do to you?
Well, and that's what he was frantically trying to get this money together. And then when he came to see me, on that second day after my first full night there, he could tell something was wrong, but I didn't know how much they could see or hear that I was telling him, so I couldn't tell him anything.
Yeah.
He just knew something was wrong. And I don't know, it's just, like I said, I'm still in shock that any of this even happened, because it's the kind of stuff that you hear about on like movies and stuff. This isn't the kind of stuff that actually, at least I didn't think this is the kind of stuff that actually happened. Like I said, I work for the airline. He's a software engineer. Like, we're not criminals. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't intentional.
I'm assuming you don't want to go back to Mexico.
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, and it's crazy because we just went with our kids. We went as a family trip back in November.
Mm.
And we had I'm so glad we didn't have our kids for this trip.
What's your message to people that might watch this or hear your story? I mean, other than don't go to Mexico, and don't carry with a gun, which you admit was your mistake. You shouldn't have had it.
No, of course. Like, I 100% admit that was my mistake. That was my error. But I mean, I've done a lot of research since I've gotten back, and apparently this is fairly common for tourists in Mexico. From what I've been reading, they'll get, granted, mine was a pretty big deal, but they'll catch tourists for like drunk in public, driving like one over the speed limit, that kind of thing, and put them in jail and hold them for $10,000 to $20,000. And if they don't pay it, a lot of times these people don't make it home. And it's crazy, because I don't know what would have happened if my husband wouldn't have been able to come up with that money. Like, I have no idea what would have happened. I don't know what they were doing with those photos that they took. I have no idea. But I mean, I would honestly not recommend going to Mexico, just hearing about how common this is, that this kind of thing happens.
And
it's just,
so do you think it was all about money?
Absolutely. I don't think any of this was legit. I don't think any of this, like I said, there was no, I know it's a different country, they have different protocol, but there was no paperwork. There was no charges listed. I never saw a judge. This was all just for money.
And you said they did take your mugshot, but it was on someone's phone.
It was a cell phone. It was a cell phone where I was holding a printed piece of paper that had my name, my weight, and the date on it, with me standing next to this like poster that had the heights. Like, and it was a cell phone. Everything was taken with a cell phone. I refused to sign anything because I couldn't understand it. I wouldn't let them take my fingerprints, which they asked to. I was just they refused to translate anything, so I wouldn't sign anything that I couldn't read. So I have no idea, but
you've got to, I mean, I'm sure, are you still traumatized by it? I mean, are you dreaming about this at night? I'm glad you went to seek help when you got home, but I can't imagine that's got to permanently scar you.
They've got me in counseling right now, and they've got me on some anti-anxiety stuff that I'm taking. I'm currently on a leave from work right now just to try and get regulated on everything. I'm on heavy antibiotics that I have to be on for a month. That's making me sick. And it just, every time I struggle with sleeping, every time I close my eyes, I feel like something's crawling on me.